Let's talk to David Craden, host of Craden's Right, writes at the Post Millennial, and he's been watching this very, very closely. We gave you a little bit of a breather, David, to kind of ingest and let the fragrance of Canada's elections sort of wash over you over the past week, but you're back. We're glad to have you back. And now this massive military boondoggle, what do you make of this? Are Canadians excited about spending this amount of money?
Well, Canadians are not excited about Mark Carney spending any amount of money right now because he's already run through $500 billion in unaccountable money because he hasn't introduced a budget and refuses to do so until sometime next year. Canada hasn't had a budget since last spring, 2024. So he's spending money at a faster rate than Justin Trudeau without parliamentary authorization. He's essentially ruling by decree. And this is exactly what I warned people about 3 weeks ago. I said, you're going to get a Mark Carney who's going to run the country in the back room. He's going to run the country like the WEF. He's going to run the country like a globalist. And before I get to defense spending, he's got a bill before Parliament right now that is supposed to be cutting immigration and boosting security spending as of the border. However, if you read the fine print, Clayton and Natalie, if you get to the bottom of the bill, there's also a little clause in there about Canadians no longer being able to own more than $10,000 in cash. This is the first step towards a digital currency. How is he justifying it? Well, that's going to prevent organized crime from laundering money. So this is dangerous stuff.
That's how they spin it, David. I mean, hold on. When we lived in Portugal, of course, the European Commission, this was what they said. And Portugal, Spain, other countries have a limit on the amount of cash, of course, that you can use. I think down to like 500 euros in some countries. It depends on your country of choice. Spain, I think, is more restrictive because they say that if you're using cash, you're likely a terrorist. You're basically on the gray market, as they've listed. You're on the gray market, aka you're a terrorist.
So the cash under your mattress, not even used as a transaction, you cannot have. That's collectivism.
That's precisely what it is. And I remember both of you talking about the Portugal experience and thinking that can't happen in Canada. We have no history of this. But yes, we do. Mark Carney is making the history in front of us. In terms of defense spending, though, where do you think all of these billions of dollars are going to go? To Canadian defense? Or is it going to go to Europe and Ukraine? Mark Carney was prime minister-elect not 2 days when he ran over to Rome and met with President Zelensky of Ukraine and promised him more billions of dollars. So where is this money going to go? And why does Canada want to join the European Union Defense Force? We're already a founding member of NATO, and I maintain that organization is way past its due date. It's time to disband NATO because it's creating nothing but the potential for nuclear war everywhere it is. But do we really want to join another military club with people like Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, who are talking about having a war with Russia when they can't even defend their own borders? Britain is a shell of what it used to be. It has more admirals than it has battleships. Like Canada, it can't even fly its aircraft. Half of them are not operational. This is a huge farce. And as for France, well, we know what happened to France when it invaded Russia in 1812. And exactly the same thing would happen again, except the Russians would be pushing back in probably a couple of days. So this is all nonsense, but it's dangerous nonsense. And as you reported yesterday, Clayton, with idiots like Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina going to Ukraine and violating the Logan Act in the process, I have to say, he should have his, excuse my language, ass hauled before a judge and get charged for violating the Logan Act and absolutely desecrating American foreign policy in the process and trying to foment a nuclear war with Russia. He's a madman. But so are Keir Starmer, and so is Emmanuel Macron. And this is the club that Mark Carney wants to join, the club of madmen who are trying to drag the world into a nuclear war. And I can tell you, this has got nothing to do with Canadian security. It's got nothing to do with replenishing the Canadian Armed Forces with the equipment that Trudeau gave away, including every last operational tank we had. It has everything to do with Mark Carney cozying up to the WEF and his European friends. And by the way, we know Mark Carney has articulated his desire to devalue the Canadian currency and the American dollar for the benefit of his European friends. This is another plan he has in the offing. So Mark Carney is full of surprises, but the idiots that decided he was a moderate guy, this was a banker after all, you've got to be able to trust a banker to manage the economy. This was a banker, a failed banker. When I interviewed Liz Truss a month and a half ago, she said Mark Carney was a disaster as the governor of the Bank of England. All he knew how to do was print money. And we've seen in the couple of weeks he's been here, that's exactly what he's doing already. More than $500 billion spent, and he's just getting started. But of course, if you listen to Mark Carney, he's still all about border security, bolstering our national defense, cutting back on immigration, and spending less money than my predecessor did. He's actually spent more money already than his predecessor did in the last fiscal year. This is all gross hypocrisy. And, I'd be laughing, except Canada is on the precipice of an economic catastrophe, probably another Great Depression, because the economy is in tatters. People cannot afford to live. The price of food has doubled in the last 16 months, and I can attest to that. People are starving in this country, and they can't afford to buy homes or rent apartments. That's the state of Canada right now. And Mark Carney is so delusional, or shall we say intentionally delusional about all of this, that it doesn't seem to bother him. He keeps talking about Canada being the next superpower, the next energy superpower with green energy and traditional energy. And of course, it's all talk. There's no substance to this. And he's trying to co-opt right now the official opposition, because I really believe what Mark Carney wants is a one-party government. He will rule by decree from the back room. He'll make an appearance once or twice a week, a question period, and he'll give a little bit of his bon on me. I'm everybody's best friend. But in fact, he is destroying this country at a rate faster than even Justin Trudeau, in his wildest imagination, could only dream about.
Oh, geez. Now, something I notice is that liberals are really Europhiles, because they don't study the European economy. They don't understand that they support European defense. They sort of have this idea that Europeans, and I felt like this too before we moved there, like, oh, they know so much about food. They don't have processed food. They don't have sugar in their food. They know a lot about skincare. They have this beautiful culture. They take so much time off. And then you go there and you realize it's a socialist hell after you lived there. And there's a government for their government. Their people have no freedom. It's an economic perversion built on debt, and they're poor. And so when you see these people like, I'm moving to Europe, I laugh, like, go ahead, And
yeah, they're like, I'm getting out of America.
Right, I'm going there. But that message maybe resonates with liberals in Canada, like, yes, let's be more like Europe, right? And I'm laughing because I had to learn this the hard way through my own misery. And so is that what keeps Mark Carney's support? Like, yes, we need to live this culture that knows everything about butter. Like that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
We need to be more like Europe.
Exactly, Natalie. Natalie, you couldn't be more correct, because Mark Carney has said Canadians are really Europeans. We're not like those terrible Americans, those Americans who have nothing but bad taste. And that's exactly how Mark Carney talks about Europe, as being this bastion of the elites, this bastion of good taste, this bastion of discretion. And this is where he thinks Canada should be going. The European Union, we're nowhere near Europe. Our natural trading partner, our natural ally since the Second World War has been the United States. And Mark Carney, of course, plays footsie with Donald Trump on Monday. And on Tuesday, he talks about branching out to Europe because we can't trust those Americans anymore, especially that Donald Trump. It's all a game. The two of them are talking. The two of them are the best of friends. Donald Trump clearly likes Mark Carney. He wanted him to be prime minister. He thinks he can control him, I think. He thinks Mark Carney might destroy the country to a degree that it might become the 51st state. But the two of them are very friendly. Mark Carney's playing a game here. But what he really wants to do is turn Canada into the Europe you just described, Natalie, where people are hungry. People are starving. We have mass immigration that's changing the culture of the country beyond recognition. We have 1 million people enter Canada in the last year. This country has been changed beyond recognition, and I'm not sure the only way out is what Alberta is actually recommending, and that's independence for that province. And I invite you to bring on somebody from that independence movement to explain exactly why that possibility, why that potential is so popular right now in Alberta, because they're saying, what is left for us in this country? All we do is dish out the money to other provinces, $2 billion, $3 billion a year to other provinces, and we get punished because we have oil and gas in the ground that the government doesn't want to take out of the ground. So that might be the only way out in terms of saving something of what the old Canada used to be. But Mark Carney, he brought King Charles III over here for the throne speech. A lot of people said, oh, isn't that lovely? Mark Carney really respects Canadian heritage. He really respects our traditions and our history. Balderdash, he brought this guy over here because Charles is another globalist. And while Charles was at the throne speech, he made the outrageously moronic suggestion that he was reading that throne speech from the unceded lands of the Algonquin First Nations, meaning they still own it. So somehow the British Empire or Canada doesn't own that land and didn't own that land. We're basically, and you have to remember, the king is Canada's head of state. He's at an official function proclaiming that Canada doesn't own the land that Parliament Hill sits on. Not only stupid, but incredibly outrageous. But that's why Mark Carney brought this guy over, because King Charles is the biggest globalist, the biggest supporter of the WEF, the biggest fan of Klaus Schwab that you'll ever find. And all of the royal family, of course, are in the pocket of these people.
David Creighton, great to see you. People asked in the chat says, is Redacted Canadian? No, we're not Canadian, but we cover stories from around the world. And Canada, of course, is a big one as we watch the militarization and the EU cozying up of what's happening there with that.
Can I just add one thing, Clayton?
Yeah.
I texted you on the weekend. I was at the Jimmy Dore comedy show here in Ottawa. It was a sold-out event, which I think I like to think I helped him because I promoted the event because I really love this guy. But of course, he said hi to you and Natalie. He loves your show. But every second person came up to me and said, "Hey, we watch you on Redacted every week." I said, "Do you watch my own show?" "Yeah, we watch that too, but we love you on Redacted." So there you go.
Thank you.
All right. Well, watch his show too.
Yes.
It's called Creighton's Right, and he is.
Yeah, he's all over X. Follow him on X. Follow David Creighton on X. And we always love having David on here on Redacted. So we try to cover stories from around the world. But Canada, of course, is turning into a liberal hellscape, and we're focused very deeply on it. David, great to see you, my friend. Always a pleasure. Thanks, David.
So nice to be here, and just see you soon, Natalie and Clayton. We love you.
Thanks so much, David. Appreciate it.